Hello, everybody, and welcome to another week's episode of WrestleWatch. This one's going to be called Open for Business because, well, we're open for business and business is hurting. That's for sure. I am.
Syndicate.
We're syndicating now. We're syndicating this program to all of the world. I am Ryan here, and that voice that you heard there popping in was Doug.
Hello.
And we have a special guest that we'll get to in a moment, but if Doug, you could read off what exactly is this podcast for people who might not be aware of what we do here on WrestleWatch.
Absolutely. Let me give 1 second. Sorry, I had a cough. All right. So, hello, everyone, and welcome to the WrestleWatch podcast. We are a weekly podcast where we discuss free agency, contract negotiations, and the overall landscape of talent and management dynamics in the world of professional wrestling. You can follow us on the WrestleWatch YouTube channel, where we stream the show live every week, or find us on your podcast catcher of choice. You could follow us on X, where we post updates, including our meticulously curated WrestleWatch tier list, and on Substack for long-form articles where we analyze the likelihood of talent leaving, joining, and of course, jumping between various wrestling promotions, with a special focus on WWE, AEW, New Japan, and Stardom.
Yeah, so we have plenty to talk about this week because we took last week off there. We had 2 episodes in 1 week to kind of catch up, and then, well, that kind of tired us out a little bit there. So we're back with even more content for your spicy content needs.
Yeah, we're back to the weekend. I think that
Yeah.
seems to be the best way to do it.
Yeah, I think that we're going to be doing these Saturday pods for the foreseeable future. Sorry for the delay. We were hoping to do this at 11 a.m. Eastern. We had to get delayed a little bit due to outside circumstances. But thank you all for tuning in right now. And thank you to our special guest this week. We have Anthony. Anthony, would you introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us maybe about what kinds of wrestling you like, what you got into wrestling, all those kinds of things, and why you're here with WrestleWatch.
Hello, everybody. Name's Anthony, and I've been with WrestleWatch since the start, with Doug and Ryan setting it up. It's been a while to get me to have like a proper mic and have proper time to join a live and have internet and all this other stuff. I've been in the process of moving for the last few months and then getting internet, setting everything up. So that delayed it for a bit. I've wanted to be on for a while, but that's just the main priority. Now, in terms of like my personal experience with wrestling, what I can point to the start of it was the PS1 version of WWE Warzone, where I didn't even know what like wrestling necessarily was. I was, like 3-4 years old. And it just, to me, it was just like a weird, bizarro, like fighting game with like all these eccentric characters that just screamed before or after matches.
It was a terrible game.
It was. It really was. Thankfully, I like learned like further on, like there's actually good wrestling games out there. But when I like pictured it that way and like saw like wrestlers as like, they're like fighting game characters, or it's like a fighting game where it's like, okay, they have super moves and they have different like unique outfits and dynamics with one another and all this like lore and stuff. I didn't actually start watching wrestling until I want to say the Ruthless Aggression era, like a few years later, and I saw some of the wrestlers like Undertaker and others that I like saw from this video game on screen, and I was like, how is this happening? It's sort of like seeing like playing like a Mortal Kombat game, and then you like figure out that Scorpio's real, and you're just like how does that happen? But after that, I like sort of realized what my niche was. I'm really into lucha and high flying. Like once I got like hooked on wrestling, I kind of didn't stop until the mid 10s for WWE, and then at that point, I just sort of like watched a lot of indie on YouTube, some lucha, and got into pure in like the last 5 years. The Cyber Fight and Bushiroad Commotions are phenomenal, and I'd just like to shout out Sendai Girls and Ice Ribbon for Joshi Wrestling as well. Very good rosters on there. But yeah, that's me. And I want to say I also, in terms of like AEW, I did get in on the punk wave around then. I was relatively aware, you know, for like the years it existed beforehand. I just that was just sort of like the motivating factor to get in. The punk stuff happened, but I'm still sticking with it. But yeah, that's about it.
Oh, cool. So
Welcome.
you have some stuff to talk to us about later on when we get into our little Japanese portion of the podcast, I think, right?
Just a tad bit. Yeah. I'm not like a big for like certain other promotions, but I should have some input. Yeah.
Great. So what we're going to start off with though is of course looking at what the tier list looked like at the end of our last episode here. Of course, if you are listening to the podcast, you can't see this, and if you can't see it, it doesn't matter because we're changing the tier list this week. Of course, we're gonna be going through it and seeing who's going up and who's going down, and we're gonna start all the way at the top. That used to be a safe jump. It was Bobby Lashley, of course. He was considered a safe jump from WWE, and well, I think that it's safe to say he's a confirmed jump. How do you guys feel about that? Safe to say that?
I think it's fair to say that he is a confirmed jump. When we could take our little victory lap, since we had him at safe jump for quite some time, I believe at this point, correct?
I
It's been a
can.
few. It's been a few months now. Yeah.
Yeah. So we knew this was coming, and I think that they've done a very good job with the Hurt Syndicate in the sense that they have slow rolled this.
Mhm.
They didn't rush them all out as one big group. We had MVP come out, and then we had Shelton. Now we're having Bobby Lashley, and I think the way they're doing it is smart. And I think it's going better than a lot of us thought because I think a lot of us were a little apprehensive about them even being brought in the first place. I think there's a lot of feelings about AEW just bringing in people who they're afraid don't actually want to be there.
Yeah.
And I think that was an initial concern. Um, but I mean, so far they've been presented well. Shelton especially has come off better than he has in years. So I think it's been a win-win so far.
Of course, agree. It's just been. I didn't anticipate it being like this. I thought with the like waiting because Shelton was a free agent for like nearly a year, I want to say, and AEW was inviting that entire time. So I just assumed like, oh, they're just waiting for him for like a full scale thing when like Bobby and MVP are there. But no, the MVP debuts first as his like manager type role, has Shelton by his side, has Shelton, on television, winning matches, doing matches for a few weeks, and then climax it with Bobby eventually coming in for a big show. And it looks like with the like YouTube metrics, like that was a very big boon for Bobby and the Herd Syndicate at large. Like that was we didn't get like those kind of numbers for Dynamite for like the last few months.
Yeah, so Shelton Benjamin has been on our tier list since October, actually. So it's been and by October, I mean October 2023. He's been on the tier list for over a year now, ever since he was released in that batch of releases back last year. It's kind of surprising that it took so long, but at the same time, it isn't. I feel like as people have been pointing out, as both of you have been pointing out, it felt that Shelton's stock had been um, not as strong for the last while there. I don't think I think I can include myself as one of the people that didn't have as I wasn't feeling as bullish about Shelton showing up and showing out. And I'm happy to be admitted wrong about that. He has performed outstandingly in AEW so far. I have to say that it's a success because of the way that the fans just stand up the entirety of Shelton Benjamin matches. Um, and it really did. I really liked how they slow rolled and introduced each member of the now Hurt Syndicate individually, took their time, made sure every single member felt big. And so, yeah, as you pointed out, Anthony, this video with Bobby Lashley's debut is AEW's biggest video. I don't know how long it's been since they've had a million views in a day for a video. So it's been I would say an unrivaled, one of those two words success for them with this debut. And another thing that Doug was pointing out there is wanting to have people that want to be there. That's been a big problem for AEW with a lot of these former WWE types. But something that I noticed when I went, just because I was, searching on YouTube for Bobby Lashley and seeing the video right now sitting at 1.3 million views after 2 days for Bobby Lashley's debut, was I went down and I saw Bobby Lashley's blog. And in his blog, he's just hanging out and being a nice boy, it seems. And he he seems ridiculously rich. I don't think that he needs this. And the way that MVP was smiling when Bobby debuted, it's that it feels like that these guys just want to do this. They want to do the Hurt Business or Hurt Syndicate now. They don't care about the money. They care about essentially the art of it. And that feels like they're going to be in the right headspace in AEW, and I think AEW is going to be a good environment for them to have that creative freedom.
One,
Go ahead,
yeah,
Doug.
real quick, just one final thing I want to kind of mention on this, and it's that I think this is one area where AEW has been lacking historically, and that's building anticipation for a big debut.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they've done obviously well with Punk. Obviously, that's one of the greatest ones of all time, and they did okay with like Mercedes. But I don't think they. This is a company that doesn't necessarily take advantage of using like cryptic vignettes in a way to tease someone coming in the way that New Japan does or WWE does. Um, and I think that that's an area where I think that they would benefit a lot. And because I do think that is something that drives a lot of interest in Western audiences. And you kind of see that with these YouTube views.
Yeah.
I think that that shows, a big debut is something that does drive interest. That's why this podcast exists. That's why our Discord, our community exists, because jumps are really freaking cool.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that's undersold in AEW a lot. I don't think they really grasp how important that is.
Yeah. What do you think about that, Anthony?
Oh, I totally agree with Doug. Like that, a lot of the debuts for AEW in recent months, even if they're like been relatively big, have been surprises, haven't been, you know, planned out and like given vignettes or other people talking, referencing the person's work or anything along those lines. Um, but Bobby definitely felt different. This felt as big, if not bigger, than Adam Copeland about this time last year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's probably the biggest point of comparison. And Adam Copeland didn't have like, FTR or somebody else like, well, Christian was hinting at Adam for like at some points, like during his reign last year, I want to say.
Yeah, I feel like at the end there, right before Copeland debuted, it felt like that there was like almost hinting at it, but not quite fully. It wasn't Bobby Lashley level of hinting.
It was more of a tease than an actual hint. Like when you see
Yeah.
MVP and Shelton actually being brought in, it's like there's no chance that like they do this without Bobby.
Yeah, and you have Shelton with the trunks that say Hurt Syndicate on it. You're like, wait a second, I know what's happening here.
Yeah. I'm just really glad they all three of them were able to get in. I'm very interested in like how they progress, how this Swerve group progresses, and I really do appreciate like them like in their later years, like wanting to still try and experiment and like believe in themselves for like this like thing that they've tried to do like for years, and like it feels like it's always been like pushed down or pushed aside or you know minimized in some way because of how dictatorial WWE sort of is with creative.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, um, and I'm really glad for them to like work with other Black talent and just other talent across the board for whatever. Would love a Lashley Ishii match at a crossover show at some point, whether that's Forbidden Door or Y'all In or
Well, Dynasty, Wrestle Dynasty. Yeah.
I mean, we could also see him going and doing some of these New Japan USA shows, like Battle in the Valley or something. I mean, he is Shelton X Benjamin. Let's not forget. This is Suzuki Gun G1 2014 competitor Shelton X Benjamin we're talking about.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in the comments here on YouTube, thank you for all for following along to the show so far. We have TC saying Lashley versus Swerve feels like a huge match. I can't agree more. I feel like that is the kind of match that without a title feels like it could headline a pay-per-view, to be honest, right now. I mean, obviously, it's not going to headline the next pay-per-view because it's probably going to be Mox versus Orange Cassidy, but that's the kind of match that they could just throw as the main event of a pay-per-view. And yeah, that's former IWGP Intercontinental Champion MVP for everybody else, making sure we had to put some value on his name, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's all we have to say on the Hertz Syndicate at this point, correct?
Yeah, I think that's about it. Yeah.
All right. So now let's move on. What's next on our list?
Well, how about well, somebody that just left WWE there is Bobby Lashley. He left on his own volition. All this Hurt Business folks did. As was referenced a little bit there, there was a little bit of creative stuff, issues that they were having with WWE. And something that's creative that WWE seems to be wanting to do is this WWEID program. We're finding out a little bit about it. It's being a little bit breadcrumbed. Um, Essentially, it is them. They have partnered with a few select independent training schools, and they're going to have these schools, which it's a bunch of schools like Nightmare Factory, which is Cody Rhodes' school. The what is
Reality of Wrestling,
Reality
which
of
is Booker
Wrestling,
T's.
which is Booker T's. Yes. There's one that is Rikishi's school. Um,
And
uh,
Seth Rollins is
Seth
Black and
Rollins'
Brave.
school. Yes. So there's a bunch of these schools that are already kind of in the orbit of WWE to begin with, that they're going to be partnering with and suggesting to possible trainees and independent talent, hey, maybe you should go and train there because you're going to learn what is essentially the Fed style, and that'll help have you a good um, transition point for you to come into WWE possibly in the future if you're interested in that. So that these schools have the ID designation now. In addition to that, they're going to have. It's been kind of back and forth of the phrasing if it's a contract that they're going to be signing with these talent, or if the talent will just have a tag on them that's saying that they're going to be, oh, well, these people were trained at a WWE ID school, you should book them, or maybe you should avoid booking them for your shows. Who knows? Um, but it sounds like some of the phrasing that we've been seeing recently is saying that it is essentially a contract that allows WWE a first refusal if the talent is wanting to sign with a different promotion. So, for example, let's just say that there's some independent wrestler that is ID and they appear on MLW shows, and then MLW is like, yeah, we'd really love to sign you. Actually, they offer them a contract. Well, now that person has to go and chat with WWE and say, hey, I'm getting offered an exclusive contract from this other company, and WWE then can just say, no, actually, you're signed to us, pal. So that's the groundwork of this conversation. Did either of you have more that you wanted to talk about with the groundwork of this conversation before we get into the specifics of what this could mean moving forward for the independent scene for WWE, etc.?
Anthony, you want to go first? Otherwise, I can go.
Uh, I'll go really quick.
Sure.
It does look interesting. Like it does already seem like they might have like people in the wings because they already have like a website set up, and they probably at some point want to like show off people with this program. I just kind of don't understand the need for this, other than trying to still hoard more and more of the market, but in a way, in a fashion to like, okay, you're not good enough for NXT or like to even train at you know, the performance center, but we want to hold on to you because we don't want somebody else to get you because they got money now. um, uh, it really does seem to just sort of be like an ever expanding like force to like hold on to specific talents you like see from like the start. It's like, okay, this person has promise, let's like already have a hold of them like like as soon as like they're training, which I just baffles the mind. That's hurting independence. That's hurting a lot of other things.
So to me, it sounded like it felt very much like those NXT UK deals
Mhm.
where they had uh, some type of exclusivity where they could still wrestle other places. Because I think in those deals were notoriously bad, where it was like 20K a year.
Yes.
Um, but it was just a way to kind of keep an eye on them, and in order to keep the UK scene from growing out of control, out of WWE's control.
Yes.
And but then the counter, and I tend to think that's how I view it. The counter, though, is that we look at AEW and we heard about their tier 0 deals, which are these deals that AEW talent sign where they're essentially per appearance deals, and but we don't really know much about those either. There's been rumblings that there could be a right of first refusal tied to those. Uh, so it could be a similar thing to that. And I only raise that because we don't know what either one of these the details are for either one. But I will say that the idea of kind of pegging people in the U.S. indies as opposed to the U.K. indies right now is very odd. Just because the UK indies were very, very hot when they were trying to do that. There was a lot of great talent. And I don't know that there's a ton of that in the US indies at the moment. When I think about like hot talent on the US indies that I think like someone would want to peg, I have a couple like Alec Price comes to mind for me. Um, but in terms of, people that are just on the indies and not affiliated with any other promotion, I can't think of too many.
Yeah, for people that are not already signed to like even a mid-tier promotion, it's pretty sparse. But I think the distinction between like a tier 0 AEW like signee and whatever this WWEID thing is I think WWEID is going to be promoted. Like you're going to know these people's names versus like most of the time when somebody's got a tier 0 contract with like AEW, it's just kind of suspected like, oh, like this person's been working independent dance and like they're on dark or the dark matches or Ring of Honor a lot, and they haven't gotten the graphic yet, but we like assume like to some extent like they may be signed. But this, on the other hand, it looks like they want to promote, that they like
Yeah.
want to promote and want people to like join in.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like that they want people to know that these talent are WWE talent, but at the same time, they're not. As far as we're aware, it could be a very small contract, as was referenced with the NXT UK, where it was like they were getting like £20,000 a year, and that was it as a guarantee, which is nothing. um, you know, that is really bad money, especially if it is the kind of deal where it's structured that you don't have the freedom really to really book yourself wherever you want anymore. You have to book yourself in the way that WWE wants you to be booked. And from talking to a bunch of the folks that were in those WWE NXT contracts, um, a lot of them don't want to ever work for WWE again because of the way that things ended and because of the way those contracts were structured. They were extremely restrictive contracts. And then when after, you know, WWE NXT died in the UK, they didn't really release them from the contracts either immediately. It was really clustery the way that it went down for them. And they were also just not given much notice that, hey, we're going to release you from this contract now, which again, it wasn't a lot of money that was guaranteed to them, but it was still an amount of money that was guaranteed to them that WWE just like out of nowhere was like, psych.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people and I will say this: there were a lot of UK talent who did not sign those deals
Correct.
and peg them for what they were, and they called them mark deals. There was a lot of talent who just called them mark deals,
Yeah.
and I think that um, I'm curious to see how similar this ends up being to that.
Yeah.
because we don't know yet, but I think that there's going to be
Well,
some similarities for sure. This
well,
is definitely their playbook.
one of the things that I would point out with that phrasing of Mark Deals is like they have now specifically, said these 5 schools, or I think it's 5 schools, these are the schools that you want to train with. And it just so happens that, except for one of them, it's all people that are either currently in WWE or that are very, very tightly tied to WWE. Rikishi, his sons are the biggest plot line in WWE. They are getting millions and millions of YouTube views. They get more views for Bloodline videos within 24 hours than the shows actually get themselves. Like, that is how deeply seated Rikishi is into this in a way. So if you are a person that wants to train for WWE and really wants to sign with WWE, of course you're gonna go to one of these wrestling schools. You're gonna go to Rikishi school. You're gonna go to Black and Brave for Seth Rollins' school. You're gonna go to Nightmare Factory, and you're gonna hope to get that ID tag. But the problem, of course, is we don't know how guaranteed that job is. Is it just a tag? Is it actually an actual pipeline for this talent? And yes, as TC points out, QT is still the head trainer at Cody's school, which is another level of kind of funniness about this. Is you're gonna have these people that are getting trained by not WWE talent, so maybe a QT gets a good relationship with somebody, and then he wants to bring them over to AEW. Well, the problem now is if it's an automatic. We don't know about this part either, so the next thing I'm about to say is a little bit speculative, is we don't know whether it is automatic that you go to this school and you automatically get this tag. Like, it is a part of going to the school is that you automatically have to sign this contract, or if it is something that is offered to the people afterwards. Because if it's something that is automatic and is mandatory for everybody going to these schools, it puts somebody like QT into a really tight bind there, or just any other talent that are just trying to, you just want to learn from Seth Rollins. You just want to learn from Cody Rhodes. And now you have to sign this contract with WWE to do that. So we don't know where it's going. So that was speculative, mind you, of course. But yeah, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, and I would say I don't think, and I agree, I don't think that's where it's going. I don't think it's going to be like, oh, you're locked in for this company. But I do think what they're trying to do with this is they're trying to, and this is what WWE has done since AEW existed. They're trying to essentially create a culture and environment where WWE is considered the end all be all, and that's the end location. And just doing something like this, even if it is just a small branding of schools, branding of talent, hey, this is where you go if you want to get here. They're hammering home that idea that WWE is where you want to be. And I think that because we talked about this before, that, right now, everyone who's in wrestling, for the most part, unless they're very, very young, has not grown up knowing AEW and WWE at the same time. But we're about 5 years away from all the upcoming talents growing up into a world where both promotions existed at the exact same time. And when that happens, there's going to be a cultural shift in terms of just like, what you perceive as being, your dream promotions, or just like what WWE means, because it's going to obviously not be the same as it was for, people who grew up in the 2000s when there was nothing but WWE.
Yeah, and just quickly, just to respond to TC in the chat asking, do you need the PC then if you're just funneling people to these pipeline schools? I believe in one of the reports it was stated that the Performance Center will now essentially act as a finishing school, or as like a finishing school was one way that was phrased. Another way was that it was a place where people can continue to train after they go to these other pipeline schools. But that the Performance Center will be for people that are exclusively signed to WWE, I believe, is the other part of that phrasing.
Spoiler: they don't need the Performance Center now. So
which that's the other factor on top of it. So it will be essentially for for the Jade Cargills of the world, where they're bringing them in, or these NIL people, if they really, really want to sign somebody to an NIL and really, really want them, rather than just throwing them to the dogs of some random pipeline school. And then Feels in the chat here says, I think that invites an interesting conversation on if the Performance Center has been an overall success. This is something that, Doug, you've talked about a little bit, and I want to get Anthony's opinion on this. My gut says yes, but there's an argument now that the WWEID is a thing. So first, let's hit up with Anthony. How do you feel about the Performance Center? If it's been a success, if they are now, creating this pipeline of schools that are not within WWE proper?
I would say other than like Bianca Belair and like maybe like a handful of like other talent, there hasn't been really anybody I can like look over think of that, oh, like that person got great because of the performance center system. Like they needed that. They would be in a totally different wrestler. Like that's the only training that they had. And I think the fact that NXT now is, being helmed by Julia and Stephanie Vaquer and all these other people that have been on the independents for like years and like, some choice NIL talent has kind of shown that the PC might have not been like the best investment for WWE in general. And that this move to like, sort of like pick up hot young talent from the independents as quickly as possible to sort of like, you know, just sort of like hoard it like in this sort of way might have been a better approach than just, okay, we're just going to sign everybody and like get them all in the performance center, you know, at AEW's founding or whatever.
It is a. I'll say this as someone who's been a critic of the Performance Center for years and years at this point. It is a very strong marketing success because they've done a fantastic job of trying to market this thing as a successful school. They've essentially followed a charter school strategy, almost if you will, where they have had a lot of flair and a lot of pomp and circumstance surrounding it, but the substance just I'm not seeing it personally at all. And even if you look at some of the people who are successes, once again it's like is it we don't have a real measure of like would they have been successful if they had just gone on the indies. I mean, what is the Performance Center providing other than a giant financial money pit for WWE to just hire people and store people, and not just talent but also professional like veterans who they just kind of like store there as trainees and agents to give them something to do so they can keep busy and don't want to go somewhere else, because I think there's a lot of that going on as well.
Yeah, right now I have on in the background the Saudi show, and I have it on mute so that they're not getting any ratings from me, brother. Um, but right now, yeah, Jade Cargill is on screen and Bianca Belair, and it's like, well, Bianca's the success there, right? But you look at everybody else in the ring that's in this match right now. It's a women's four-way match. And it's like I think there are two or three people in this match that actually went through the PC. And that's out of eight people. So it's like, what has the PC really done? And also, as people have pointed out, it feels like Jade has kind of regressed after going to the PC. Actually, so I guess like as was mentioned by Luke in the comment here, something that I had made as an argument before is Roman Reigns is probably the best example of WWE's in-house training program, and that was before the PC really started, but it was still FCW was a Fed territory, so it was all in-house at that time. And then TC here.
Sorry, I was muted.
And then
No,
TC here in the chat also is saying he'd like to see the overall success rate of the PC trainees versus other schools like New Japan or CMLLs.
Well, I can tell you right now that those are going to be a lot higher, because I think what uh, the Performance Center and the does specifically is they are a sifter, whereas something like the New Japan Dojo is a lot more selective about who they bring in, and then they actually try to develop and foster them and grow the talent. They have a lot smaller, class sizes, and they just grow them that way. Whereas, as we said, WWE will just, they'll bring in, 200 people, and if they get 3 that work out, they consider that a success, even though that's like a 1% graduation rate. So that's and I think that's an extremely inefficient way to do it, but I understand that's how they do it.
And as for what I'll say for CMLL and Lucha in general is it is very lineage based still, and you're probably training with your parents, at like the age of like 5, 6, 7 for like some fundamentals, some like aspects of it, and whatever company they're working for, whether it's AAA or CMLL, you've got like a 90% chance of like if you're, you know, even just somewhat not competent, but like you if you like train at like 5, 6, 7 and like you just keep at it in that sort of way that luchadors can like go, very high likelihood that you're going to, be working with like your parents at some point.
Mhm. So, did you guys have any thoughts on either people that WWE might be looking at to hit with this tag, or just how this might affect the prospects of these sorts of people going to other promotions in the future?
I think we just got to play it by ear, like just
Mhm.
see what like the next upcoming weeks and months have in store for how this deal is actually going to work, and if more promotions are going to work with it, and how this is going to affect the entire North American ecosystem for independent wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How about-
my hunch is that this is more about the schools than it is about the actual talent, especially right now, because I just don't think the talent is there. And I think this is maybe it's an attempt to improve a bit, because I do think they acknowledge that, having just this very homogenous style that is taught only one place, and that's the only place you work when you're learning, is not good. And branching out to these other schools is a good thing for talent, because obviously all their big stars are people that have come from outside of their system. So it could be just a way to kind of put their stamp and get their tentacles all over these schools as well, and send them to there. And I think that that's probably more likely what this is.
Mhm. Well, I think that then we will see how and where this goes. I think that has been a good discussion so far about the WWE ID program. If you're in the chat, if you have any ideas of folks that you would think might get signed up to this, or where you think this is going, let us know and we will hit this back later on in the show. Somebody that is leaving WWE or has already left WWE, to get back into the tier list kind of conversation here, is Samantha Irvin, the ring announcer that has been Fed fans' favorite ring announcer, I think, to the point that it seemed like WWE was training somebody else to just copy her style, even. That's how popular she was with WWE fans. So this is an interesting conversation to me, also because first off, it's a ring announcer, so it's somebody that's a little bit different from who we discussed in the past. Now, of course, we just had MVP on the tier list as well as a manager, because he's not really wrestling as much anymore. So that's one part of this conversation is how do you all feel about having ring announcers and other on-screen talent be on the tier list? The other part of this conversation is just the odds of Samantha ending up in another promotion. She left immediately from WWE, so it's believed that her contract is now just over, but it's possible, looking at how things went with Renee Paquette when she left WWE, that it's possible that because of her leaving this style, that she might not be able to work for another promotion for quite some time. And then the other question on that part is, of course, is she even interested in doing such? Of course, everybody is looking at the possibility of her going to AEW because, well, it's the other big boy promotion, and her fiance, one Richard O'Shea, is in that promotion. Now, of course, Ricochet on Twitter went out and said she is not going to AEW, and that sounds like Samantha was wanting to focus on things that were outside of wrestling, like singing. And also, when she was talking to WWE, she really wanted to do other things in WWE other than just ring announcing. She wanted to be an on-screen character and manager of other talent, and WWE just wanted her to talk on the mic. That was it. So, how do you guys feel
So
about those two factors there? One, do we want talent like this on the tier list? And then two, where do you think she might be going if she goes anywhere? Doug first.
so here's where I'll go. So first of all, in terms of talent like her being on the tier list, I generally think it's kind of be a case by case basis. Um, Largely because I think that if when we get down to it, we're getting I don't want us to get kind of goofy where we're like, oh, is Jim Johnston going to be going on the tier list as a music producer? At some point, you have to draw a line, and I think for the most part, if they're not, if you see them on screen, I think it's okay. So I would be okay with her being on the tier list. Having said that, now looking at what happened here, I think this is I'm not surprised because this is something we've known about WWE for a while, and it's that they are very difficult when it comes to outside projects and being supportive and being willing to offer that. I mean, we've heard that for decades at this point. So even so much so that Vince was trying to get a piece of the action that talent would do outside of the WWE. So I don't know if it's necessarily that bad still, but the fact that you know what she's telling us in terms of she wants to do outside projects and focus on acting and singing, that does not surprise me at all.
Mhm.
Now, will she go? Do I believe her when they said she doesn't want to go to AEW? I do actually. I think that she absolutely does want to do other things. The fact that she kind of left so abruptly from WWE makes me think that as well. That it's just like, she's fine. I don't want to say burning a bridge, but I mean, she didn't exactly give the best amount of notice. Um, so I kind of see her just kind of being done, and maybe
Yeah.
she is, and it definitely sounds like she is frustrated, especially if she wanted to do other things.
Yeah.
So for those reasons alone, I do think that she is probably trying to do other things. Having said that, is it impossible that I see her showing up in AEW? Um, no,
Mhm.
especially as like a one-off. But I don't think she's gonna sign anywhere. So because of that, I'm gonna say she's likely stay independent.
Okay. And 2 points that I'll make out here is one, um, it seemed like that the notice that she gave them was either the same day or a month. And what we've heard, it sounds like that she was saying that it was like a month ago that she had been asking for these things to try to do things outside of WWE and also to do other roles within WWE, which is another thing that WWE doesn't seem to like, is letting people actually have a little bit of creative say in their own performance on screen. But then we were hearing reports, and it seemed like it might have been I'm not sure the veracity of the reports now, that she was giving them the notice on the same day and was just leaving on the same day. So it was within a month, to be sure. But whether it was the same day or not is something that was up for debate. Anthony, how are you feeling about, first off, if somebody like Samantha Irvin should be on the tier list, and then if so, where would you put her?
Uh, I generally feel like if you are an on-screen presence on the show, whether you're a manager, announcer, or commentator, that's kind of free game to, do this stuff. Like Nigel, we didn't anticipate that he'd like have another match or, participate back in wrestling for when he was gone, and I would have 100% said he should have been on the tier list as soon as he left WWE. Now for Samantha, it is an interesting case. What I more so see with her is maybe a guest appearance of some sort, like you know, like Ricochet's match with Takeshita coming up, or something big for him, and maybe she's like uh, announcing him to the ring, or she's in the front of the crowd, or something along those lines. But I think she might pull what Renee did and just post her WWE career, spend a few years, spend a few months uh, building like a catalog of stuff that is separated from that, to create like an overall like different sense for herself, and like at some point down the line maybe go to AEW.
Okay, so what tier were you thinking then for her?
I think like a likely stay independent, likely
Okay.
just at this point. And that we'll see in a few while, like if it's like veracity, if like it goes up or down.
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling toss up on this, honestly, just because I don't. It's very interesting to me that she just decided to just straight up leave WWE. Um, but I think that there are high odds that she just is kind of done with wrestling stuff for now. Um, and it might be a while until she actually appears somewhere. So actually, maybe I'll go as a lean stay for now. Now let's see what our lovely committee decided. They went with lean stay for now. So it's a little bit higher than what you two were saying, but it's in the same region of the tier list.
I am fine with that.
Yeah.
Next up is a little bit of a triple threat of a conversation here. We're talking about the New Day. So their contract with WWE, they originally signed it at the end of 2019 as a group. All of them had their contracts lined up. That was at the beginning of when AEW started, and WWE was trying to get a bunch of people on 5-year and 3-year deals to get them through, guarantee that they wouldn't go to AEW. I think that Randy Orton was another one around that time. I think AJ Styles was another one around that time as well. Um, well, the 5 years is up, coming up here. The question, of course, with them, or there's two questions, I suppose. One, if they would even leave WWE, if they would have interest somewhere else is another question. But I think that one is a lot easier to answer if they would have interest somewhere else, or if other places would have interest in them. But the other factor with them, of course, is injuries. They have all had a little bit of time off, especially Big E, due to his neck issues, but he's been used on screen. He's being used for all of these pre-shows for the pay-per-views that they're doing. So he is working on screen for WWE. It's unlikely then that they're going to do, this entire time as quote-unquote injury time and lengthen his contract that far. But it is possible that they still will be lengthening his contract and the other two members of the New Day. So, given all of that, first off, what do you think are the odds that they would leave WWE to begin with? But then, second off, we have to consider with all this is looking at all three of them individually, or do we want to look at them as one unit? What do you think the odds of them leaving WWE is? Let's start with Anthony on this one.
I think that there's at least some chance that they Xavier and Kofi want to like go to AEW, or at least have considered it. And I wouldn't say that they've regretted like the last 5 years, but like, you know, seeing how like the New Day is like gone towards, and it feels not necessarily stale, but like they're not getting much more in that company as far as I can tell. And Big E's out on injury still. I think if an offer is like given to them from AEW, that they take it. It's just a matter of I don't know. If I had to like consider everything, I would want them as a package deal, and I think that they also would. But I'm thinking of a scenario where Big E's still on injury, he might have injury time, and as a spite, WWE, reverse Unos and to like AW's thing for Ray Phoenix, and it's like, okay, you can have Kofi and Xavier, but Big E's still with us for like another 2 years because of his neck, and that would suck, but I can't like discount that maybe being a possibility. So I think they're a likely stay, maybe lean stay.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to get closer to that contract. And I definitely do trust it with the amount of, stays that we've had this year so far with major WWE talent.
Yeah, that is another big factor in all of this is that WWE has been doing a good job of defense this year with reassigning talent. So that always makes it a little bit pushes it a little bit closer to that safe stay region of things. Doug, what are you thinking with this?
I think they're safe stay. Like, I think it's because here's the thing. I think they're absolutely a package deal. I don't. I think they know that they are more valuable together than some of their parts, and I think that knowing that they're going to go wherever uh, they get the best deal, and they're going to get the best deal as a trio, and
Doug, your audio is cutting out here right now. So we will get back to Doug.
I think that as I said,
Oh, your audio cut out there.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, am I back now?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, sorry about that. So I'll just kind of, sorry, it says my internet connection got a little unstable. Apologize for that. But basically, what I think is going to happen, they're more valuable as a trio. So I think they're going to stay together as a trio, and because of that reason, it's going to be a while before Big E would even have the option. I think that they are going to lock him up for a while for that injury, at least for all the time that he was, out and not on screen. So I think that it really makes no sense for Xavier and Kofi to leave early. I think them as a pair aren't that valuable. I think you need all three of them, and I think whatever they do, they're gonna stay together as a trio. Now, can I see a situation where Kofi and Xavier try to sign a shortened deal to kind of line up with Big E's uh, injury deadline, like when he would be available to leave and then renegotiate again as a trio? Yeah, but that would be probably what, 2 years from now. So for those reasons alone, I'm a safe stay.
I don't think it's going to be as long as 2 years, honestly. It could be less than a year because that's how quickly they put him back on screen. And also, just for the. I know that WWE loves doing this injury time stuff, but like, it feels like this one would be dickish considering the severity of the injury, you know? Like, to the point where I don't. Like, it would be quite the statement for them to put 2 years of injury time on Big E for an injury like he had, and for him being on screen anyway for them. That's my opinion, at least.
Yeah, a level of injury that a good portion, like I believe his doctor said, like there was a greater than equal chance that he would not wrestle again.
Yeah.
And that's not happened for like a lot of other injuries we've talked about. It's kind of I can imagine it being like perceived as very distasteful, especially for Big E, given like the severity of that injury.
Yeah, I think that if they were to do something like that to Big E, it would probably heighten the odds that at the end of that time that they're all just gonna leave. Because like I mean, yeah, it would be kind of distasteful, I think, as well. But it does bring up still the factor of like it could be a while for any of the three of them to go somewhere else. Um, so given all of that, it sounds like none of us are really in the region of thinking that there's likelihood of Big E jumping anytime soon. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and I think that there was some speculation because people were like, I think they were reading a lot into Kofi being at that indie show
Mm-hmm.
where Top Flight was there.
Yes.
I think people are reading way too much into that. I don't think that was anything.
Okay, so then with the other two, then are you guys wanting to put them on the tier list, and how likely would you put them on the tier list? How high?
Probably just likely stay, um, just for like the reason stated.
Lean stay.
Oh, that's a little bit hotter. Let's see where and how people voted from the committee on these three.
Sorry, I was scrambling to unmute. I meant safe stay. I apologize.
Oh, well, then that is exactly where I thought you would put them.
Yes, apologize for that.
And then TC in the chat says that he would rank them as Woods, Kofi, and then Big E in likeliness to jump. Yeah, I think that there is a little bit more odds that Woods would leave WWE considering his other interests outside of wrestling. Yeah, let's see where the committee overall thought about the three of them. It is Kofi and Xavier going as a likely stay, and Biggie as not being added to the tier list. I think that that's pretty reasonable for the moment. I would see safe stay as probably more accurate at this moment, just because of the uncertainty about how long they would be there. But like we have one number of a deadline as the end of this year, but we don't know just how hard of a deadline that is for their contracts. So yeah, how do we feel about likely stay? Sounds good for now.
Sounds
That's
good
fair.
for now.
That's fair.
Next up, another tag team that has had some talks with the WWE is the Hardys. Right now, we have them as a lean stay independent. Now, the thing, of course, is this might be a spoiler to some people, is They have been working some tag team wrestling in TNA here. So it seems that things have solidified a bit with their stay in TNA. Do we think that that is changing things of their odds of going to any of the major three promotions that we look at? For them would be New Japan, AEW, or WWE. How about Anthony? How about you start with this on the Hardys?
Yeah, as a resident TNA fan, I honestly they're actually not even that much on the product. Like it's very like backstage for a lot of it, and palling around with the faces of the roster. But I kind of don't see them. I think I see like the earliest in for them maybe being the Rumble as like a return or something like that. Huge pop there. Maybe latest like WrestleMania if they're there, but like by that time I would just think like they're off. They're going to have an independent run, or they're just going to. There's like no desire to like bring them back to like that extent. Like Jeff, whatever bridges he burned, they're burned for good for the company. But we're still a few months off from even the Rumble, so I just think like maybe just like a down a tier or so. Like I think they might actually retire in TNA in some sort. Like it's not maybe like where they wanted to, but like if they like really do want this like to be their last year, like second to last year, I'm not sure if AEW or WWE will take them up on their offer at this point.
Yeah, Doug, how are you feeling on both those factors there? Do you think that Jeff burned too much of a bridge with WWE that he would never go back? And where do you think that they would most likely retire at this point? Because it seems like they're getting closer to the end of their career.
Yeah, I think if I had to guess, I would say that I don't think he did burn the bridges. I think the bridges are still intact. I think that WWE would take him back. And the other thing that they would take him back eventually, but not at the moment. I think they're going to wait a little bit. I think they still are, people are still kind of worn out from them in AEW because they were pretty notorious kind of go away talent where people are just done with them. So I think that it's going to happen. I think I will put that down. I think within the next 3 years, they will be back in WWE, I predict. They may do an appearance at a Rumble, and maybe even as soon as this upcoming Rumble, because I think that they're not going to be under contract with TNA. I think they're going to stay independent and keep their options open, and I'm sure TNA is fine with that.
My personal take on this is at the moment, I think that you're right, Doug, that when we're looking at things maybe in the course of time of like next 3 years, yeah, I think that they would want to try to do their retirement run in WWE. That's what they want. And I could see WWE being down to let it happen. Um, but at the same time, part of me feels like the most likely thing is for TNA to be the most game for it. They would be the most interested in having the Hardys. They would possibly offer them the best deal, actually, also of those three that we're talking about here. And yeah, I just think that in the short term, when we're talking about within the next year, I gotta say that it's feeling like they're safely staying in TNA at this point. Even if they do a surprise appearance at the Rumble, I just think that on the grand scheme of things, that they're safely staying in TNA right now. How about we go back around the horn there? I go to Doug first, and then Anthony. Then on where you want to put the Hardys on the tier list this week.
I'm gonna say safe stay. I'm very safe stay on a lot of people today.
I think like today is also just a safe stay. Like I don't anticipate anything in the next months necessarily, so safe stay for me too.
Okay, let's see where the committee has plopped them, and it is they went a little bit more conservative than we did on their likelihood. They went with likely stay, one tier above where we were thinking, straight dab in the middle between lean and safe stay. How do you guys feel about them being as a likely stay at? And we're gonna call it at TNA at the moment because they've been pretty squarely in TNA, even if they say they're independent.
I don't think they're gonna go anywhere else at the moment.
It seems fine. I think eventually people will come around to safe stay or maybe even removing them from the tier list if we get closer to big WWE early part of the year season.
Yeah,
They'll see we were right in time.
Yeah, I feel like if it gets to the Rumble, which is February 1st this year, it's a little bit later, and they're not at the Royal Rumble, like I think that we had to have a very serious conversation about if the Hardys are even gonna stay on the tier list for that matter. Somebody else that's in TNA is Leon Slater. He has been working TNA for the past year. It's almost exactly 1 year ago that he signed his contract with Scott D'Amore of TNA. He has been appearing on the UK Indies for quite some time. Well, quite some time. He is only like 20 years old. He is a young lad with a lot of potential. He's somebody that I've been very high on. I've seen him live in the UK a few times now, and he is the real deal to me. Recently, he did a tag match as part of RevPro's cross promotional things with New Japan Pro Wrestling, where he was tagged with somebody that I'm hot on is Josiah. He is a Spaniard that has been working on the UK indie and I think that he is somebody else to be watching. And with one President Hiroshi Tanahashi of New Japan, after the match, Tanahashi kind of jokingly said that he would be offering Leon Slater a contract with New Japan. Is it though? Is it a little bit of a joke or is it serious? How about we go around the horn on this one? We'll start with Anthony, as he is, of course, as Anthony has said, excuse me, that you're the expert on TNA here, right?
Yeah, Leon, as a person that I think still lives in the UK, has been making very sporadic appearances for TNA in the last year of his career, but he always makes a splash whenever he's on screen for matches, and that was apparent since like the first time he like really came in. And it seems like with Mike Bailey looking to at least test the waters with other promotions, he's sort of passing that young, like real life of the S division, like spark to like him. So I probably anticipate Leon Slater having like the X Division title probably within the next year. So I really do think he's going to stay independent and stay with TNA, at least as long for like that. But I don't doubt the idea that New Japan would be interested in him, or at some point AEW would be interested in him. But I think that's probably like a year or two down the line, when he's got more of a repertoire in the States, and they get him on more US dates, just like here for Prestige or any of the other like notable indies that partner with AEW to some extent.
Yeah, I think that he is going to be touring the U.S. for a little bit around the time of Full Gear. I think that he's scheduled for. I think it's Prestige Wrestling has a show that's in North Jersey. I just said Jersey in a very weird way. The weekend of Full Gear. Yeah, so he's somebody that I've been high on, Anthony, when they were talking right there, very high on as well. I do see the possibility of Leon Slater having a big impact, so to speak, in the X division once Speedball leaves. But I think that there is a lot of interest in him from New Japan and AEW as well. But I could definitely see him doing some, at least as a guest appearance in a New Japan tournament. I could see happening like Best of the Super Juniors.
I can definitely see that. And there's still no discounting like the real small potential that it's like he might get into Kushida, Kevin Knight situation where like he's still kind of both and neither at the same time, like those two.
Yeah, I think that officially they have dual deals, I think, right?
I think that sounds right. But I'll say this about Leon Slater.
Yeah, go ahead, Doug.
I love Leon Slater. I think he's fantastic. I mean, he's part of that Brett Peck group of young and up and coming talent. But I will say, if we're looking at New Japan in terms of signing outside talent, it's still, I feel like it's still real touch and go on how much they're willing to invest in talent at this point in time in that way, especially when they're don't really have any real major incentives to lock people up right now, just because all the people in New Japan, I think, are pretty comfortable. I don't feel like there's too many flight risks. And even if there are, especially since a lot of them end up, more or less a 50-50 shot if they're gonna leave, they're gonna go to either AEW or New Japan, or or WWE. And if they go to AEW, they still have access to them for the most part. So it's not really a huge benefit to lock people up versus what the cost and the headache of it is. So I don't think he's necessarily going anywhere. So he's going to be a likely stay for me.
Okay, that's a likely stay from Doug. Anthony, what is your vote for this one?
I think also a likely stay.
Okay. I'm gonna go with likely as well. Although I think that he is going to be one of those people from the UK scene that we should be talking about and starting to look at. I think that Michael Oku gave a lot of people eyes opening to what's been happening on the UK scene recently. That it feels like things are bubbling back up, and that there's a lot more momentum behind the scene. Um, so I could see there's a little bit of me that wants to say lean stay just because of that. But I think that in the short term, when we're talking about a year out, is short term, relatively speaking, I think that it's likely that he's going to stay at TNA. But I still think that there's that little chance that he does end up in New Japan, possibly. So let's see where the committee voted on this. They went with lean stay at TNA. How do you guys feel about that?
I think that's fine for now, but I really do think like he's either locked down for like another year in TNA, or it's not going to be as quick as people think.
Gotcha.
So I think like in a few weeks time, they're just going to probably knock him back down the list or take him off.
Yeah.
I'm fine with a lean stay, honestly. That's fine.
Next up is somebody that's been attached to TNA at times, is Mustafa Ali. Recently, he's been working a lot more indies, and he's picked up a lot more indie titles, which gave me the feeling that it seems that he's going to stick around as an indie guy for a little bit longer and not sign up to any promotion in particular. So that's why I think I was the one that nominated him even, and I think that my argument is it looks like he's kind of put the ring on his finger, so to speak, and is settling down a little bit with the indies. Let's start with Doug as the resident Mustafa Ali lover. How are you feeling on this?
Well, he's also my neighbor. He lives in the suburb like down the street from me. But here's the thing with him. I've enjoyed his work since he left for the most part, but there's other times where I find it, kind of repetitive and redundant, and and lately especially, it feels like it hasn't been going anywhere. When he first started, I was a little more interested in it. Um, Now I don't know where he has any if he has any direction. Maybe he thought he would have been signed somewhere by now or had an offer and he just didn't get it. But it's definitely getting to the point now where I'm not necessarily feeling any movement, as much movement on him. And I talked about this the last time we brought him up and he was nominated, that I kind of felt the same way, that I felt that, he's was losing steam. And now that I'm talking about it again, I think he's lost even more steam than the last time. So I think him staying uh, independent is a lot more likely to happen now. I think I said he was lean stay last time. I think I recommended that. I think I'm ready to go likely stay independent now.
Ooh, that's pretty hot for you, for somebody that is your neighbor, even. Uh, how are we feeling there, Anthony, about Mustafa Ali?
Careful, Doug. He might hear you. As for Mustafa, it's he's very interesting. I watched his entire X Division run and TNA run while it's happening, and it was a very good run. It was maybe not the best of all time, but for the match quality, pretty good. And I'm honestly kind of curious what his game is going to be outside of an election year. Like, is he going to progress beyond this my fellow Americans like type deal when it's we're into elections just like next week and just in a few days actually. Like, is he going to progress this character, do something else different, and maybe that like shores up some more different types of interest from like other companies or other promotions. But I think he's just gotten a lot more comfortable ever since like dropping the X Division title and sort of taking at least a break from TNA, to like be more independent, just to like stay there at least for like the time being. And maybe as like a fan, I'm just sort of hoping he has like a reinvention next year, um, to like get more interest. But I think like for now, if it's like how he is now, we're just gotta you know knock him down a peg. I don't think he's at all likely that that much more likely than he was like 3 6 months ago to be picked up.
Yeah, I'm feeling a likely stay at this point. I don't want to knock him off the tier list entirely, but like I think even just one level down isn't enough for how it feels little momentum is behind him signing to a major promotion at this point, and how much momentum there is for him sticking with the indies.
Yeah, we can maybe, of course, like see how like New Japan, his relationship with them like progresses in the next upcoming months, but
I mean,
it's really up in the air.
the way that I look at it with the New Japan relationship is that he's only done strong shows. He hasn't traveled to Japan, correct?
I don't believe so. There might have been one show he was in Japan for, but I think it's a I want to be with my family and I don't want to like leave the states necessarily type deal for him.
Yeah, so I'm going likely stay. It sounded like Doug's going likely stay. Anthony, were you going likely stay?
I think so. Yeah.
And you know what? The committee for once agrees with us. It's a likely stay for Mustafa Ali. And let's just keep on rolling through here with everybody's favorite resident of the tier list. It's Dijak, baby.
Yay!
Yay.
Dijak!
We are really Dijacking it now. Okay, so Dijak has been appearing with MLW, and it seems that he is signed to MLW even. I think that that is grounds for just taking him off the tier list. What do you guys think?
Fine. Yeah. Let's go. Like, I don't. He hasn't like really like shown. We haven't like heard any reports or anything for like major interest from New Japan or AEW. So I'm just like, yeah, if MLW is where you're gonna be getting your stamping grounds, like, I just take it.
Yeah. What do you think, Doug?
I think we take him off. Goodbye, Dijak.
Oh, okay. So this is gonna be really sad because it's time to end the Dijacking. Yeah, we have low confidence now of Dijak ending up in one of the major three, but hey, it still is good for him to be in Major League Wrestling and have a full time deal with them, and it looks like he's been getting a lot of indie bookings still. So if he's happy there, then great for him. Let's hit up Dragon Dia next. He has been performing in the Super Junior Tag League in New Japan right now. They got an upset win over the current the current light heavyweight champions of tag there for New Japan in the tournament. So he is currently signed to Dragon Gate. Anthony, how about we start with you on this? Do you think that Dragon Dia is somebody to be looking at on the tier list? I would say to also phrase this a little bit into the comparison point we have right now is kind of Ninja Mac, where Ninja Mac has squarely left Noah, and he is a free agent and is appearing in the Super Junior Tag League. Whereas Dragon Dia, as far as we are aware, is still in Dragon Gate. Now, some of this does make us think a little bit to the situation with Jake Lee, where he said that it was kind of kayfabed about him leaving Noah, and then it turned out to be true. So let's start with Anthony. How are you feeling about Dragon Dia? First off, being on the tier list, do you think he's notable enough? And then second, do you think are the odds of him going and staying in New Japan?
I I really I advocated it because I saw that he had like a similar path, like at least in terms of like the New Japan relationship between him and Ninja Mac. They both have like entirely different approaches to their what you consider a home promotion, with Ninja Mac being a Noah and then leaving Noah and saying he's leaving Noah versus Dragon Dia. He was working, he was working Dragon Gate right before he was in the best Super Juniors tag league this year. So I just want to like throw it out because it seemed like at least New Japan had some interest to bringing him back. They didn't necessarily have to do that. There were other talents and other ways they could have like set up this tag league. And I just think for Ninja Pack and him, like they specifically just had just a soft interest, at least using them more. And I think that was like at least worth mentioning, especially with the amount of weeks we like mentioned Ninja Pack. And I don't anticipate him leaving Dragon Gate just yet, but I think there's still just a slight eye on him from New Japan. Just maybe not as strong as like others, but I think like they definitely have an eye on him.
Doug, what are you
I-
thinking?
I think I'm just going to kind of speak more broadly in general when it comes to, the guests that get brought in these tournaments, be it the tag league or the best of super juniors, and it also goes to other promotions too. In Stardom, on their 5-star GP brings in, someone from, Oz Academy or Act Girls or something like that. I feel like there's always the thought that, hey, this is a chance to take a look at them, and I always just kind of roll my eyes, or not really roll my eyes, but just kind of hand wave it, because I feel like it's such a rare thing when I see a jump because of something like that. It happens. Don't get me wrong, it does happen, but I feel like it's rare. So I almost am always just gonna go either uh, safe stay or likely stay. In this situation, I'm gonna go likely stay.
Yeah,
I think
yeah. Go ahead, Anthony.
I was just thinking it's the reason I think that Ninja Mac and Diala even got mentioned is it is two tournaments like within the same year. Like they already like been shown to this New Japan audience like earlier this year, and to be brought back, I think shows just like a little bit more than just like, oh, we're bringing
That's
in
fair.
somebody for this.
Yeah, that's a fair point. That's a fair point.
You can go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I think that that's an interesting point with that is that this is not their first appearance in New Japan's leagues this year. They were both in the Best of the Super Juniors earlier this year. Um, Ninja Mac got a few wins out of it. Dragon got one. Um, so it's not unusual that to see them. Of course, they were being billed as from their home promotions for that, along with Blake Christian as being billed from Ring of Honor. It is interesting that they're back again, but it could just be a matter of that they like working with them and that they are partner promotion talent. Well, Ninja Mac was partner promotion talent essentially because of the way that United Japan works. Rather than real partner promotion like Ring of Honor, I should say, with all of this as a caveat. Um, so that's why I don't feel as strong about Daya's chances just because um, he is signed to another promotion. He is being billed as from another promotion. All those kinds of things. The thing that is a comparison point to me is thinking about how it went with Jake Lee earlier this year, where at first they were billing him as from Noah, and then they slowly stopped billing him as from Noah during the tournament for the G1. So right now, I kind of don't personally. I don't really want to put Dragadea on the tier list, but if I were to put him on, I would probably go as like a safe stay.
I think that's fair. I wouldn't go that way, but I think that's definitely a fair assessment.
Okay, and where would you go again?
I think I'd go likely. Likely
Okay,
stay.
and then Doug, where are you going?
I went likely stay.
Okay, let's see where the committee went. It was likely stay at Dragon Gate. So we will see where this goes, and I'm glad that everybody agreed with you two. Next up is Tekla staying in Japan. She's currently a likely stay at Stardom. She's been getting a lot more focus in the booking recently. They won the tag titles. Did Hate, her new faction, which was the former Odatai, kind of reconfigured into Hate. She's also been getting some buzz from these matches that are in anticipation of historic crossover, where she has been teaming up with Clark Connors of the Bulldog War Dogs, and kind of showing that there's going to be cross promotional business between Hate and the War Dogs. How are we feeling about Tekla at this point, and in the likelihood that she's going to be staying at Stardom? I'm saying that it's getting likelier and likelier that she's just staying at Stardom, but how about we start with Doug on this one?
I've been already kind of thinking of, maybe it's time to just take her off the ballot. But in this situation, I decided let's just kind of slow roll it. And I went safe stay at this point. I think, again, yeah, and obviously we got the build. Yeah, we build up to the historical crossover show. But as you said, she's been heavily involved in storylines. I think Hate's becoming a very cool big faction. There's a lot of new factions in Stardom right now. It does feel like a big reset. And I think that they are more or less setting her up to kind of have a breakout eventually.
Yeah.
So I think that a safe stay is where I'm going to go.
Yeah, I feel like that she's going to be due up for the Wonder Belt at some point coming up, I think. Just because
Yep.
it feels like that they've had a lot more focus ever since they've come closer to New Japan with their internal structure. The Hate War Dogs crossover feels like part of that, part of this mission. That'll probably carry over into the Wrestle Dynasty season, the Wrestle Kingdom season, with the late December show for Stardom, and then leading into those two big shows in the Dome. Yeah, it does feel like that it's going in that direction. It's interesting to see them doing so well with a villainous stable. It feels like Odatai was kind of had a little bit of that, House of Torture heat to them, whereas it feels like Hate has a little bit more of a cool factor heat to them. So I've been enjoying watching it so far. Anthony, what did you feel on Tekla? Do you think that you agree with just knocking her one spot down to safe stay? It sounds like that's where Doug is going on this.
I think I agree. It just generally feels like longer and longer she's just becoming more a safe stay for Stardom. And I think in terms of like homegrown Stardom, like Stardom talent for like the upcoming Forbidden Door crossover season for like everything, I think she might be one of them. And I would probably err on the side of like if they're doing that, AEW's asking Stardom, asking Bushiroad, hey, have these people sign for at least 6 months, at least a year, to like make sure that they, as soon as like Western audiences sees them, they're not plucked by WWE. So
Yeah, because
yeah.
like I think that she's somebody that she's stated and has been rumored as having some interest in working in America. So it's possible to see her be somebody that maybe WWE might want to target if they see her on one of these cross promotional shows. So I think that we're all kind of in agreement of just bringing her down one tier down to safe stay is probably the right option, right?
Yep.
Well, the committee agrees, so I'm glad that that was no fuss, no muss on that one with Tekla. And I think the next ones that we have coming up here are going to be a little bit quicker for us to get through. Bozilla is currently as a safe stay in Marigold. It feels like that a little bit of the buzz has been going off of her going to WWE was the rumor. It was rumored both in a German language and a Japanese language publication when Julia debuted in WWE formerly with NXT that Bozilla might be following her to WWE. But since then, we haven't heard a lot. That was around 2 or 3 months ago by now. How are you guys feeling about Bozilla? Do you want to keep her on?
Low
Yes.
confidence. What really?
No, I don't want to keep her on, but I do say I did love her match against Sari was it 2 weeks ago?
You did love it?
I did love it. It was fantastic.
Oh.
If you've not seen it, I suggest you go check it out. But
I have not because I am a Sari big fan, but I did not go out of my way to go see a match with Bozilla and Sari. No.
yeah, go out of your way. You'll appreciate it. But I am also low confidence, and I think that it's also just kind of like we're at that point where we're looking at these Tokyo Sports articles. Not saying it was Tokyo Sports specifically, but that tier where you never know what they're working or what they're doing or what they're actually saying. So
Yeah.
I think I can indicate that Bozilla's going anywhere.
Okay, and then Anthony, how are you feeling?
Yeah, I think with just like 2 foreign language like articles to like go off of for like evidence, and it's been like months later, I don't think Julia's like really got that much pull necessarily. Like even in NXT, even in WWE,
Yeah.
like she'll have some to some extent, but I don't think she's bringing in like five, like Bozilla and like 3 other people. I think she's kind of going to have her format as she is now, and maybe somewhere down the line Bozilla gets eyes on her, but I think right now it's safe to say that she shouldn't be on the tier list.
Okay, I still want to keep her on the tier list, but you know what? Yeah, low confidence. We'll remove her. That's fair enough. Next up is Katsuhiko Nakajima. Similar story. Safe stay currently on the tier list. I don't have a lot to say about him. I think that I think the watch is over on him. I don't see a lot. I don't have a lot of confidence of him showing up anywhere. Anthony, how about you?
I think he's just staying in the Japanese independents. Like, there's the slimmest of slim chances that he makes like a big splash back in Noah or New Japan or All Japan or somewhere at some point, or even AEW maybe, like the slimmest of chance, or WWE. But it's so narrow and so small that I just feel like it's safer to just take him off. Like, if it happens, great. We'll see how long it lasts, but
Doug, how are
it's
you
real.
feeling then?
Yeah.
I've wanted him off for a while. I think that it's just if we would have seen it by now, I think.
Yeah, that's the
At
big
least
thing for me.
at least a
Yeah.
hint.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me is that we would have seen something by now at this point. It just doesn't seem like it's gonna happen. So, committee agrees. Low confidence of him jumping anywhere. It's gonna take him off. Aaron Wolf is another one of these. Safe stay currently. There were rumors about interest from Tanahashi about signing this young Japanese judokan who competed at the Olympics again. He previously won gold at the Olympics 3 years ago, technically speaking, 3 years ago Olympics. Um, it seems that ever since the Olympics, though, there hasn't been a lot of conversation about this happening. So this is another one that I feel like we don't have a lot of confidence in this happening. And also it's possible that maybe this isn't the kind of talent we normally would be putting on the tier list. What do you guys think?
I can definitely see that assessment. I still kind of want him to be where he's at on the tier list, just because like I still want to have like some room for, okay, what does the Dome show do? How like dude like New Japan stories what's the next step for New Japan in the year 2025?
Yeah.
And which talent do they bring in? Which talent do they focus on? How do they structure things? And like I can sort of get like not having on the tier list, but I still have like the smallest bit of doubt, more than like Nakajima, that he there might be like something in the first half of like 2025 for Wolf.
Yeah. And then Doug, how are you thinking?
I am so happy that we're finally getting some of these people on this tier list that need to get off just because of he's someone that I think it was I was fine with him being put on when it came up, but I think he's one that as soon as we saw there was nothing else outside of Tanahashi's interest, that it was time to just move on, and that's the case with this one for sure.
That's kind of my
Yeah.
vibe on it too. Is just that like I want him to be on, but just because there has been not a lot of talk since then, I think that we should just take him off at this point for the
Yeah.
moment.
And maybe for looking forward, we should just not trust like Tanahashi saying like, yeah, maybe I want this guy.
I don't know. He has some sway. I don't know why I feel like that, but I feel like he has a little bit of sway.
Okay.
So
He is a professional liar as a wrestler, so you never know with him.
did he learn it from Cody too? So yeah, we're gonna say low confidence right now for Aaron Wolf, but he might appear on the tier list again coming up. And I think that's the last one. Is that correct? Is this the last one for this week?
Looks like it.
Shane O'Mac, currently safe stay independent. It seems that to me, he just likes going to wrestling. That's just what it seems to me. I don't think that he's signing with anybody. What do you
I think he
guys
just
think?
like to take pictures with fans. I think he just wanted to like take pictures with the Bucks and Tony and just like create some sort of like interest in him, or troll a little bit. And maybe there was something there at some point, but I think he just wanted to have fun.
Yeah.
And he did, I guess. And I think we all had our fun, and now it's time to take him off.
Doug, what do you think?
So I think it's time to go for Shane O'Mac. I think that it was fun while it lasted. We had little discussions about the silliness of him, taking over the elite or whatever it was going to be. But I think we've had our fun. It's time to just take him off the tier list.
Yeah. It's low confidence taking him off the tier list. So this is what the tier list looks like At the moment, as of today, today's November 2nd, 2024, I'm going to read off the safe jump tier, and then how about Doug, you hit up the next tier and we go around the horn like that. It's safe jump, we have Hikaleo and Penta El Zero Miedo.
All right, likely jump. We have Michael Oku, Ray Phoenix, Jordan Grace.
In lean jump, we have Ricky Starks, Zilla Fatu, Miro, and Speedball Mike Bailey.
I think Zilla is somebody that we might be talking about soon enough with this WWEID stuff.
Yeah, not to mention the departeds that we have.
Rip and Pizza.
That'll be a fun discussion in itself next week.
Toss up, we have Danhausen, Megan Bain, Josh Alexander, Mina Shirakawa, Beth Phoenix, and Ninja Mac.
And then for lean stay, we have Joe Hendry, Shinsuke Nakamura, Mayu Iwatani, Alex Windsor, Leon Slater, and Samantha Irvin.
And for likely stay, we've got Sami Zayn, Thekla, AJ Styles, Viva Van, Kevin Owens, The Hardys, Mustafa Ali, Dragon Dia, and then Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods of The New Day.
And then down in the safe stays, we have Suri, Utami Hayashishita, Hook, Street Profits, El Hijo del Dr. Wagner Jr., Dustin Rhodes, El Hijo del Vikingo, Becky Lynch, and Giselle Shaw. That's it for this week's podcast, unless either of you had any thoughts on anybody there, or if you had any hot takes.
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Baron Corbin next. That's my big question that I have right now, and I'm sure that he'll be someone we talk about next week. In terms of hot takes, let me think. Okay, so here is my hot take, and I had a discussion with someone about it too. But this is a Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame season, correct?
Yes, it is. Yes,
and as such, there's a lot of discussions going on about who is historically significant.
Mm-hmm.
And my hot take is that if you are a candidate who is getting in largely for your historical significance, I believe that you should not be voted on until you're on the historical ballot. So someone like, I say Trish Stratus is a good example. Like, the only reason she would get in is for historical significance. I believe that she should not be voted on until the year 2040. That's my hot take.
2040.
Yeah, I think that anyone who's going in basically on their historical significance alone, you shouldn't be voting on them right now, unless it's been a long time.
Okay, how hot do you guys think that is? How hot?
2040 is pretty long time. I think that's it's not boiling. It's pretty lukewarm. It's pretty lukewarm.
My follow-up take on that is that I don't think that basically any women that wrestled during the Attitude Era should be inducted into the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame.
In WWE, you mean?
Anybody that wrestled in Attitude Era WWE of the women of that era, I can't think of one of them that I would induct.
That's fair. Because here's the thing. I think that a lot of it is just people want to they want to look at this one section and ignore everything that happened before it, everything that happened after it, everything that happened around the world, and you just want to look at it inside a bubble, and I don't think you can do that. So I agree.
Yeah. I was going to say maybe Mickie James, but she's not Attitude Era, so.
Yeah, and she's not Attitude, so that's why that feels like the dividing line is Mickie James, I think, on her own merits, not just how historic of a person she is. I think that she would be deserving of possibly being inducted. But somebody like Trish Stratus,
that is a hot take in the sense that I think a lot of people would disagree with you, but I think it's largely because a lot of people don't understand the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Yeah. I think my hot take is just that I love being wrestlers kicking out at one. That's just it.
Oh yeah, because that was
That's an ice cold take. That's
Well,
the greatest thing in the world.
the hot take that was posted on this one was Kenny Omega kicking out at 1 at Forbidden Door 2023 has had disastrous consequences and was not worth the pop it got for how much the kick out at 1 it has inspired.
Yeah. In fact, I want to like run counter to that. I think more wrestlers should kick out at 1. I think you should kick out at 1 at least once per match, and have that pop. I don't care.
I
Ruin
think
wrestling.
I think that not necessarily on a finisher, but I think that kicking out at 1 should be a thing more than it is, because it is annoying to me just having 1 2 1 2 It's no, there should be some ones. There should be some ones. It makes sense.
Tomohiro Ishii is the king of the one kick out.
Well, yeah, I think that there's a difference between the pop 1 versus just kicking out at 1. And I think that wrestling as a whole has not had just regular 1 counts in far too long. I would say like 30 years it has not been a thing to just like kick out at 1 just naturally. And I think that people should get back in the groove of just kicking out at 1 sometimes. You don't have to always have it be a near fall. Every fall should not be a near fall. And that's what 2 counts are. 2 counts feel like near falls every single time.
But here's the counter. That's a second of rest that the talent get.
Yeah.
So if they're laying down, why kick out early? Why not take that time to kind of really give yourself another second? So that's the psychology of it, I think.
Well, that's been hot takes. I think we got kind of hot there. So with that, thank you all for listening to this week's episode of the WrestleWatch podcast. Please like and subscribe and comment on us on all the platforms that you are listening and following us on, which include our YouTube, our Twitter X account, our Substack, and whatever fine podcasting platform you listen to us on.
All right. Having said that, I'm Doug.
I'm Anthony.
And I'm Ryan. Thank you all for listening.